Welcome to another episode of Scouting for Growth. In an era where digital communication is the bedrock of professional interaction, sharing, interpreting, and engaging in documents significantly impacts our efficiency and comprehension. Today, I am joined by a visionary at the helm of revolutionizing the traditional document experience. Alex Shevelenko, the CEO and co-founder of Relayto, brings to the table a compelling narrative of how transforming mundane PDFs and presentations into interactive web experiences is not just an upgrade, but a necessity. With a career that maps across tech behemoths like Microsoft, Salesforce, and SAP, to laying the cornerstone of management consulting firm, Global Partners, Alex's journey is a narrative of relentless innovation. His academic laurels, an MBA from Stanford and executive education at Harvard, further accentuate his profound understanding of the technological and business landscapes. Since its inception in 2017, Relayto, under Alex's stewardship, has not only garnered significant funding, but also witnessed remarkable revenue growth, marking its stance as a formidable player in the digital communication world. His global outlook, shaped by his extensive travels across countries and the rich tapestry of professional experiences, renders Alex a vanguard in the realm of digital content innovation. Today's discourse will weave through Alex's entrepreneurial voyage, his insights on leadership, genesis and trajectory of Relayto, and a gaze into the future of digital content experiences. As someone with a finger on the pulse of tech-driven communication enhancements, Alex's perspectives to our dialogue will bring both foresight and actionable intelligence on harnessing interactive content management platforms like Relayto. Join me as I delve into a stimulated conversation with Alex, exploring the contours of digital document and content innovation and its incredible impact on the market landscape. And don't forget, if you like what you hear, subscribe, download, and rate this podcast as well. So through this dialogue, I aim to unmask the potential of interactive AI-led content management platforms in reshaping entrepreneurship and enterprise communication, and how leaders can leverage this technology to foster better engagement within the world of digitalization. Hi, Alex. Thank you for joining me on Scouting for Growth.
You bet, Sabine. I'm excited to be here. Always excited to connect with you.
So, I've prepared a little bit of a discussion with you, which will go through your past and how you actually set up Relayto. But so my first question to you, Alex, and you have an impressive track records. I mean, when I reviewed your LinkedIn CV, I could see you work with global companies such as Microsoft, Salesforce, and SAP. What ultimately motivates you to take the leap into entrepreneurship and build your current company?
Well, I tend to think that sort of entrepreneurship tends to call on you, and in a lot of callings, it's just you see, you may have some of your own needs, but in my case, probably it was probably just the the opportunity that I saw and the need that I saw in the market, and I experienced it in my own skin. And you mentioned some of the companies that I worked with. So the funniest thing is that my very first proper job was an internship at Microsoft Office, launching Office 97 at the time, and their internet
Wow.
capability. Yeah, so I'm dating myself here. And what this thing that I discovered there was my job to look at this thing called the PDF, and why it was taking over PowerPoint and Word as the last mile, the medium that actually touches the customer that wants to read a particular document or presentation, right? Whether it's on the website or even something you send to them. And looking back, through my career, we always ended up kind of creating things in either some sort of Adobe Creative tool or PowerPoint, then saving it as a PDF and hoping people have this rich, engaging experience with our ideas, which was really unrealistic because the medium was meant for print. It wasn't meant for digital consumption. And so right now in the Relayto and why I leaped into the entrepreneurship is I saw that nothing is changing, and I was just able to see that, hey, the same thing that PDF did once upon a time to Word and PowerPoint, it didn't kill them. It just created a better medium, for reading something precisely printed. Now that very few people read precisely printed materials, we could do that to the PDF. We could take a PDF and optimize it for the world that we live in today, which is mobile and digital and interactive and engaging, that where the storytelling is a really important capability. And PDF kind of is great for print, but obviously weakens some of that. And so that's where I'm telling you the story of Relayto. But I think for me, the story of entrepreneurship is deeply connected to the story of why I founded Relayto and why we built it, because I saw that nothing has changed over my entire career, and somebody needs to step up and do the difference. And so that's the mission of Relayto and why it's really deeply personal to me, to unlock the power of our storytelling for the modern
Interesting.
era.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting because, often entrepreneurship is rooted into a value, a belief, something which is not working effectively. And I think it's very important to qualify the market you're into, which I call experiential document management platforms.
Mhm.
Maybe there's other terms, and it might be good for you to explain the space you're in to our listeners, right? Because it's, at the end of the day, it's about experience. It's about
Yeah,
driving a unique engagement between what is happening out there and synthesizing it in a visual manner to make it much more appealing to its reader.
yeah. Yeah, I think if I take a quick step back, we could talk about the terms, but I want to talk about the trends, right? Like first. So we mentioned the PowerPoint. And by the way, PowerPoint was great. It was the first product that democratized kind of some kind of storytelling for the masses. There's, obviously a billion users of PowerPoints, ton of them created. And so, and there's Adobe InDesign, for example, did that for professional desktop publishing. So there's this generation of tools that was just about, okay, we're going to enable creation, whether it's like very basic in PowerPoint or more sophisticated in Adobe. And then the second generation of desktop kind of productivity or in general productivity came around collaboration. And so we all talk about using Google Docs and Google Slides, and maybe if you're more sophisticated design for products, it's Figma. So they're collaborative tools. And the third generation, and that's the generation that we're advocating, and that's what you mentioned by using the word experience, is fundamentally it's about the consumer of your content, right? We know that if you use PowerPoint or Google Slides to create a bunch of bullet points and collaborate on those bullet points, it doesn't necessarily mean that at the end of all that creation and collaboration, the consumers want to read a bunch of text on a slide, with ugly bullet points, right? But if you take a step back, what do they want to do? What that is where like the wave that we're working on now, right? And then you could collaborate and create efficiently to create what does the end recipient of your communication want? And increasingly, they want a conversation. They don't want to be like pummeled with information anymore. They want to be able to engage. They want to make the interaction their own. They want to choose the adventure that they go on. So that's the big picture of the medium that we're advocating is a consumer-centric medium. And so you could call it a content experience. You could call it, interactive documents, interactive experiences. But the fundamental core to it is that they're consumer-centric. They start with the end recipient in mind. And in the process, to make that process efficient, we tend to use AI. We tend to use no-code software. And that SaaS is another word, that's software as a service. And those are buzzwords for technology people, but ultimately, for investors, and they kind of go, "Oh, great, Alex, you're building AI-powered interactive content. Amazing, come." But the for the real people, and that's what we really care about is like, how do you as a recipient actually get to engage with important, complex ideas? And how do you as a sender, communicator, how do you create the types of experiences worthy of your mission, worthy of your message, worthy of your audience that shows them respect? And that's there's no category name for that, but
Yeah.
we're working through that.
I think,
Consumer centric business content, maybe customer centric
yeah.
business content.
Well, I think it's interesting because you have also talked about a lot of trends and patterns affecting the world of technology to serve the customer. And it's important to remember that the customer is in the center of everything we do. The customer, the user, whoever becomes a member or
Mm-hmm.
a paying buyer of a service. And often, when you look at SaaS model, you have a freemium model and you also have a paid model, which allows some users to become advocates and enable you
Mm-hmm.
to refine your products and those who are using it on a permanent basis. But I think it's important to highlight some of the terms you use. Democratizing. A lot of technology today or enablers of solutions, technology solution will look to democratize those solutions, like you mentioned, the PowerPoints at some point in time and
Mm-hmm.
the PDF at some point in time. And now the way you are driving experience through making communication much more effective. But it's also about understanding how you simplify that communication by using technology, which allows you to drive that software as a service model. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, as a serial entrepreneur, what have been your joys and the joy of experience building Relayto and the challenges you've seen over the path, because you're cross industry, you're working with finance, you're working
Mm-hmm.
with manufacturing, you are working with insurance, you're
Mm-hmm.
working across the board. So
Yeah.
what has been those big challenges and joys you have experienced over your journey, Alex?
Yeah. Well, as you could have probably felt, like we're deeply passionate about what we're building. So it's a privilege, and it's a joy to work on something that you really believe in. And if you think of like, okay, so PDF was the way we would present a book, for example, right? Like the closest, like originally kind of notion of like something that goes right that it's a PDF right before print. Um, and that's the way it's often, the ebooks, the white papers, etc., presented. We are reinventing the book, right? Particularly the technical book, the complex book, the more, not the maybe nonfiction book, right? Like that let Hemingway be Hemingway, right? Like, but since I'm not a Hemingway, and as much as I would like to, write well, I think we could kind of help people still, give them some extra super weapons as communicators to get their important message across. And that's really rewarding, right? Because I think probably deep inside, back to like your own kind of, if we all look at ourselves as, we always, sometimes we had an idea, right? And we wanted to, we thought it was a good idea. We probably did some research. We probably even talked to a lot of people, got this idea. But then when the pivotal moment came, when we had to introduce that idea in either through written communications, visual communications, or in person, um, maybe people didn't buy into this idea very well, right? Maybe they got distracted by some like avoidable errors in communications. And um and so like this great idea, this great research, this great passion, maybe something that's really profound and had the potential to change the world for better, gone nowhere. It just died. Like the you just kind of because maybe of the medium not being sufficient, right? And so for me personally, it's just a privilege to help people bring their ideas to life, increase the chances of good ideas winning. And typically, the tragedy of modern day business and medium is that the more valuable the idea, the more important idea for humanity progressing, for company progressing, for individual career progress, the worse it's communicated, right? The most silliest, the trivial ideas, you have a ton of clickbaity, optimized communications around them. The ads that get you to buy the stuff you don't need and solve the problems you don't really have that feed on you. Those are optimized, right? Because there's large consumer centric marketing forces driving towards that. But the important things, the things that insurance protect your family or protect your company, like you sometimes just overwhelmed with that information, you make suboptimal decisions. Or if if you're the insurer, the provider of that message, it may just not hit the mark and not get people you know to understand how it can help them solve their problems. So for us, that's the I guess the fundamental joy of creating something that helps other people create, right? And create things that are important, that are meaningful. The second part of your question is what are the challenges? Um, I would say there's a ton. Like I think most people that start up entrepreneurial adventures probably underestimate how difficult it is to pursue it. There are technical challenges in a technology driven company like ours. We underestimated how difficult it is to transform an analog format like a PDF into a true digital experience. Because it turns out there's like gazillion varieties of PDFs, from like 1,000-page books to one-page infographics to presentations to cards and so on. And so it took us a while, and I guess now it's a great thing because it's defensible and very hard to comment. But it took us a while just to get the basic technology of transforming, all varieties of PDF and other static content into HTML5 ready to go digital experiences. And then I think on the emotional journey, and we could dive into that, I think there's like tremendous joys of partnering with customers and early adapters like yourself, people that are kind of excited to get an edge, could try new communication mediums. Um, but I think that balances obviously with hey, something that doesn't work, the product is evolving, and especially in those early years, you're kind of getting a lot more in the vision than on the reality of what you can deliver. And I think now we're at a stage where the original vision like has cut up with the product, and it's really fantastic. But it was painful at the beginning, right, where we tried to experiment and see what actually delivers the value, and we had to hack it versus build it out because we wanted to kind of develop minimal viable things that are real before overbuilding it. But that's an iterative process. It's not like, oh, this is an overnight success. So it's a long discussion, but I hope that gives it two flavors of kind of the challenges and the joys of helping builders build.
Yeah. So I think it's very important to highlight to our listeners that you have been shaping, scaling, growing Relayto now for over 7 or 8 years. And I was very fortunate to use the first version of Relayto when I was at Startup Bootcamp. So a lot of our reports became very visual experiences for
Yeah,
our readers on the website. And so it's important also, Alex, to actually explain how long it has been taking the journey also to
yeah,
change minds, right?
yeah, yeah. I think this is sort of what I'm discovering, especially in businesses like ours, where there is a creation element which could take your product into multiple directions, versus the workflow where you could sort of have limited workflows. Creativity is unlimited. So what we found is the first version, like we first built Relayto as a side project within Glocal Partners, which is a company that I've kind of also started, and it didn't work. Like basically plain and simple. Or if it worked, it wasn't scalable. And then the second version of Relayto, we kind of got that's where we got this insight that okay, we can actually, instead of building new documents from scratch, what if we take PDFs and presentations and really transform them in that started working, but it was also like a almost tech enabled service at the beginning, and we were very fortunate to have a few enterprise customers that helped deliver and pay for R&D basically for that service, but also kind of have some early adapters like yourself that kind of were willing to give it a go. And then only now we're like a real proper SaaS and AI powered company. But it's interesting that like when you look at some of the companies that are used, at least for the content creation universe, and people that build websites probably know a company called Webflow, which is a content management system, modern content management system, also pioneer in no code. Well, it turns out there were three versions of Webflow, before the Webflow that we know, built by the same founders, and they kind of all took that learning to build the version that we know. And it turns out that Figma, which is another company that people know, actually took many, many years before I even had a product out there. So we were doing it in the real world. They were kind of behind the scenes just trying to build the product. And then Canva started as a yearbook many years before Canva. And so if I look at the sort of the people that are trying to democratize content, they tend it's a side project for many years, right? And so if Figma democratized graphic design, it was many years before they actually product design. It was a long process. Canva democratized graphic design, long process. We're democratizing interaction design at Relayto, and I don't think we would have understood what to do and had a unique take had we not had that journey where we were kind of experimenting and saying, hey, I built something for myself, even I can't use it, right? Then the next step was like, hey, I built something for myself. Other people seem to like the end output, but the way to get there is too complicated, right? And we can only do it for them. And then finally you kind of get to something that actually does really democratize, and that's magic, but it's not an overnight success.
Yeah, no, I get that. So I want to go into leadership and management now,
Mm.
Alex. And you have led and built amazing teams over the years and in different countries. Very important to know that today you're in the United Kingdom, but you've been in different industry. You have actually worked in many different countries as well. How would you describe your leadership and management style?
I think it's changing to the world that we live in a lot more. So I think, I obviously started in the world where it wasn't more in person and worked, got the grounding in kind of Silicon Valley, software innovation kind of culture, whether it's, being at Salesforce, right, with going public, or at Success Factors from earlier stages to going public to exit to SAP and so on. And those were the types of organizations that I think rely on a kind of strong community building, both internally and with customers. A lot of it physical, right? Like Dreamforce is a well-known event. We at Success Factors did the same. We had a chance to develop deeper relationship with customers, and that really appealed to me. As a person, and Success Factors, if you kind of look up what they do, their original focus when I joined was helping people and companies perform better. It was employee performance management. So obviously, as a leader, if you join a company that helps optimize performance, you care about that. You care about people. You care about these ideas. But in the current world, now we are like virtual first environments. And while we have pockets, right, a team in Latvia that sits, close to each other, in London, the hub, etc. But if you have pockets and you're really building virtual first, I think you need to work extra hard to create an inspiring culture. And I don't think we've figured out all the answers, but we do certain things that allow people to bring themselves to work. And some of the favorite meetings that we have is when people share their stories. And like one of the best um, examples when everybody went around, and it took us several meetings because there's so much goodness around that, of telling a story where they overcame a challenge. And you really connected with people. People open up, even in a virtual setting, and started feeling a sense of community, a sense of common points. Even though you may have somebody in Philippines and Latvia and Ukraine, they find common areas. So I think it's being real, not being afraid of the personal, and creating these environments where people do get to, share of who they really are, bring their, pets and families and, other things that are important to the music into the meetings, into the environment, into Slack to liven it up a little bit.
Yeah. And as you said, today we all have to be adaptive leaders. As you highlighted, we are, for many of us who are technology driven, working in technology driven environment, even though we may be supporting very specific industries, we have remote teams. And so adaptability and flexibility and learning to work and achieve outcomes, right? Because I think it's about setting the right outcomes becomes really critical. So for you, Alex, what are some of the really best practices you're actually implementing when you make decisions as a CEO and a leader within Relayto?
Well, again, if you think of Relayto, I would say earlier stage technology innovation is important, and also tend to be of the opinion that raising a ton of venture capital money and then wasting it is not a great idea. Now it's becoming more accepted wisdom, but it was quite a bit contrarian when we were starting out, because with somebody with my background, you can raise money, but we chose to be lean and scrappy and resourceful. And so that was the fundamental kind of first founding principle, is like, what can we do with a small team? What can we do to allow capable people that may not have tons of experience in the particular space, but have the right maybe DNA for the sort of global Silicon Valley environment, who are kind of go-getters, go create an environment where they are not being held back, where they can thrive and they could kind of show what they're capable of. And we created, to support that, we created a really unique program. We call it Internpreneur, where it's kind of intern and entrepreneur kind of coming together. And so it's for people who may want to test, what it's like to do their own startup. And some have gone on, done that, and have gone on and started their own companies and raised capital. Some were like Stanford MBA students that took a gap year off and join us for adventure, and then are doing their own entrepreneurial adventures. So, and some are people that really have no experience, and they feel like they want to be a graphic designer, becomes a UX UI designer, and so we provide a platform for them to do that. So that was fantastic opportunity and way to really help people shape the company, even though they are kind of at Zuckerberg age when he started Facebook. The second thing that we've done, that on the leadership side, that's kind of from the very beginning, we are kind of a company of founders, right? Like, kind of relates to the intern program, but literally, our CTO was a co-founder and CEO of his own startup previously in interactive e-learning space. Our head of content, had his own graphic design business, then had his own other business and kind of in other areas. And so he is kind of just a serial entrepreneur, and he brings that entrepreneurial energy. Our kind of one of my colleagues from Success Factors was one of the first people at Success Factors. Then we used the exit money to build his own business. Now he's joined us. So I feel like that creates extra demands to not control people too much, right? Like, I may have a vision, I may have an opportunity to inspire people, but it's like we are co-creating as a team, and frankly, we're even co-creating with our customers, right? Like, because we want to really build something that the best advocates and champions of the business tend to be customers. I just spent some time with one of them in Dublin, Will from managing director of SaaS which is kind of a leading SaaS conference and platform in Europe. And I like it was really shocking to me, but he could describe Relayto better than I could, even in this call, because he is just as a user, he has a better way of kind of figuring out what's important to them, articulated. He doesn't go into the details that I might. And so back to kind of how do you create an environment that allows junior people to progress and not feel like they're junior? How do you allow experienced folks to feel like we're co-creating, we're on a joint mission? And how do you allow this to not just be internal culture, but a culture that's fundamentally driven by customers who inspire us and challenge us and help us move the business jointly forward so it becomes their baby. And we like to name features not after ourselves and some inspiring things, but like, hey, this is a Sabine feature, or hey, this is a we built it based on a
Awesome.
customer input. And I think that just reminded in our team meetings, one of the most important cultural things is if you're doing a Zoom, you kind of
Yeah.
have all internal faces. So we actually have a face of a customer, and we call it relate to customer in search of wow. And that joins as a separate participant in our team meeting. And just to remind everybody that we're not here to please ourselves and celebrate for ourselves. We're here solving for the customer. And so that's
Yeah,
that's a little bit about
awesome.
our culture and leadership style.
That's superb. And I think it's a great tip actually to put a picture of a customer to actually create that wow factor. I think it's a great way to trigger the brain to actually focus on that person, that individual, and always serving him or her. You also highlighted as part of this community, taking care of younger people, taking care of more mature people, but it's about the collaborative aspect of work. So I would love for you to share who are your best customers and how are you making their lives really unique with the platform?
Well, we can't say all of who are all of our best customers. Obviously,
Oh
some of
no,
them are large
absolutely. Yeah.
enterprises, but I will say this that the kind of again, how do you define best, right? Like something for like motivating our team. We have one customer, one of the largest life sciences companies in the world. Um, they're bringing to market a new medicine that's going to help deal with a condition that is prevalent, right? Again, without going to too much discipline, diabetes too, right? And so, like, if you're helping launch a customer, something that could help your grandma or your uncle or your kind of your friend deal with the condition because it's going to get faster to market in your country. This is just super inspiring. So like one of the definitions for us for best customers is customers whose mission we back. We feel this is going to do good in the world. They're like deeply, they care. They're not like, so we try to avoid or block relate to from customers who are creating things that are spammy and are not adding value. And we are proud of customers with worthwhile missions, be they a large technology company, large life sciences company, large nonprofits, and so on. So that's one kind of underlying thing, and then back to like why we're here. Why did we start the company? It's not just to bring any idea in the world, that we like to get the good ones in. And so the second thing, obviously for us, right, we find that when we were starting out, we took an unusual path somewhat, and we found uh, customers that were larger institutions because we thought like, hey, where are the PDF? Where is the most PDFs and PowerPoints? Well, it's startups have them, everybody has them, but the large organizations have the largest volume of content. So we wanted to learn from them, and we picked two. The first partners, but they became customers. One is Salesforce, one is Accenture. And if you think of Salesforce, they kind of create Disneyland for business to business, communications, or a customer centric company. And so their content is beautiful and thoughtful. And so it was very natural for us to kind of try to learn from somebody who already knows how to do that. And if you think of Accenture, similar thing, slightly different focus in the technology industry, but Accenture was the first company to do TV ads for B2B, and so they're consumerizing the enterprise. And so their content also looks, very professional and it has like a lot of substance to it. So we in addition to, earlier stage companies, but we kind of worked with those companies, and they obviously had a bit more budget than a startup would, and so it helped us co-create the platform with them. I think there's a risk there, right? Like because if you go with a very large company that may not be uh, as necessarily adapted to self-serve mode in all the times, right? Like they may go, okay, well, why don't you create a premium service for us and do it for us? And so what we've learned is that even though within the large companies, their teams, they're a lot more open to self-serving. They're small teams that are sort of highly, self-sufficient. And I think as our product matured and it became easier to support anyone, like without a lot of work, that we tend to prefer to teams that are kind of want to create themselves, want to take the control back of their creation, don't want to rely necessarily on an agency or even on us to do things.
I love
But
that actually,
that's
Alex, right?
yeah.
I love that because we talk about democratization and now you are talking about industrialization and self-serving. So addressing the need of different target audience. And I think it's important here to spend a moment understanding we're serving the big companies, but you're also serving the smaller teams and smaller companies too.
Yeah, and so once you say, well, I serve the big companies, but I try to do it at a level of a small team or even an individual sometime, right? Like a lot of entrepreneurs in the companies, like people like me, like when I was like I didn't have a huge team working on the content all the time, but I had a really important presentation that I worked on and put my heart and soul into for 3 months, right? Like, can we support that individual to be successful inside whatever company they're in? And then if we do that, it will sort of take off as sort of our thesis. And it's working right now. So we're able to, like, it almost doesn't matter. We have, super successful companies in insurance, to your point, and that's kind of one of your areas that we didn't know the employee benefits world that well, but all of a sudden we had one employee benefits broker just use it for themselves, use it for marketing, for selling, and delivering things like open enrollment, educational content for their clients, which is important in the US. And they had so much success that then they started a reselling business for Relayto to people just like them to begin with, right? And now it's expanding. And so, and we found that this relatively small employee benefit kind of, brokers and agencies, they deliver this great now employee experience for their clients. And they're very sticky. They, in the sense that they like the service. They use a lot. They use a lot of capabilities, and we're like, this is amazing, right? Like like all I need to do is just have one person who kind of cares about content, where it's like a slightly, maybe not 100% of their day, but it's like maybe 40% of their job is to kind of think about, how to create content. So they could be a dedicated marketing person, or like a project manager. And that really opened our eyes that if the industry is complex, right? If the message is complex, then the size of the company may not matter as much. It's the complexity that matters. And guess what? Who were like the happiest users of our AI capabilities are these boutique brokers who have to kind of go and explain, well, on this policy, you can't control F through, through 50 PDF to find the right answer, but you kind of can ask a question and get from 50 particular assets that are relevant to this client, what's the best page to get, both initial answer, the deep dive contextual answer on some kind of healthcare benefit that's very particular and could be very important, like let's say fertility benefits. People
Yeah.
really want to understand what those are. It's a life and, you know, future decision for people, and being able to answer that question is really important. And so we
Indeed.
can enable that, and help people help. And as you know from your experience in insurance, like I think every insurer aspires not to be just a piece of paper, to their to their customers and future customers. And so this is where we enable that. But again, the organization itself is small, and so we're I think back to democratization, right? If you make something compelling enough and easy enough to use, you could work with the largest organizations and their most important projects, but you could work with anybody who tries to make complex simpler.
That's superb. And it's important, I think, for you to have explained this example in insurance, because yes, it's an industry I've served for many years, and I'm going to continue serving. That the industry right now needs to go through a bit of a reinvention as how they educate their customers, how brokers educate customers, but also as insurers educate consumer, direct to
Yeah.
customer, but also their brokers, and how they actually put the right tools and technology and techniques in their hands to be actually much more, to communicate in a simpler way. Education is critical today, and I think it's a way some company win and some company failed, because we need to remove that complexity, and the customer is
Mhm.
asking to actually be educated even before they start buying any product and services. So from a market landscape and growth, actually, Alex, you already mentioned the word AI. We are in the world
Yeah.
of generative AI. How does it fit in the future of Relayto, in the current and the future of Relayto? Because you just gave us an amazing example as to how that enables an agent to be much more responsive to his or her customers, by enabling them to understand the clause and being able to explain what is covered or not in the
Mhm.
policy.
Yeah. Well, we've always been using, pre-current excitement about AI. We've always kind of been thinking, well, how can we take certain patterns from what we see and use different modes of AI to improve it? So, for example, one of the tragedies for many of our customers is like, hey, I can create this beautiful PowerPoint, but then before I share it with the customers, I have to create this really sad looking version of it that's flat because it has no animations anymore, no augmented storytelling, and because that's what PDF doesn't support that, right? And so one of the first things that we've done is we actually enabled one-click AI animations on a page that actually allow you, hey, I just create this page in whatever tool, and then I animate it in Relayto, and you could do really custom animations that are more like bespoke, but you could also use the AI magic and then tweak that. And so people really love that because our brains, human brains, are wired to pay attention to things that move, right? And so if you want to draw attention to your content, you need to create movement. It needs to be pleasant. So we had to train the AI to make it pleasant versus annoying. And so that's kind of an application around computer vision, where you see what's on there, and you kind of start creating pleasant experiences based on recognizing what's a background, what's a foreground. The second related to this is like, can you recognize, it's very simple, but super powerful. Um, can you recognize the background, what's a background on an image, and replace it with a video? So you get a static image replaced with a pre-approved brand video, or we have a library of videos that kind of do the background pages. And so when you open your experience at the very beginning of Relayto, you're not greeted with a static page, you're greeted with a emotionally connected video that fits and supports your message, but still, knows that the message is what's important. So the video is in the background. It automatically replaces, that doesn't replace your text. It replaces the background, the static background. And so these are little things, right? But they matter. The other thing that people typically get lost in navigation, right? How do I navigate intelligently 100-page document, right? So we can use AI to generate smart table of contents that are dynamic, that have sub items, and that actually historically we use the other techniques, and we use now OpenAI APIs to support that where that's the best strategy. It's not always, in our view, the best strategy for everything, because sometimes you may get better data by finding the table of contents page and reading that and intelligently interpreting where that is. And sometimes you don't have the table of contents page, so you have to let the AI figure it out and create the structure. So these are examples that are very real, and we don't go and advertise them like it's AI, but they're kind of designed to help you go from zero to hero in terms of digital experience, where you bring this analog PDF or presentation, and all of a sudden you have a digital experience that looks a lot more like a modern website. But I think the main theme behind this, and I have a bit of a challenge to the generative AI. We use it, but I think the generative AI as a discipline has too much focus on creation. And we talked about that earlier, right? Like the first generation of productivity tools were all about like, I'm just going to help you, create a bunch of bullets in PowerPoint. I don't care if people actually want to read those bullets, if it will, but I'll help you create that. And so I think there's a little bit of a bias that we're focusing too much on creation, too much probably copy right now. And so we're all going to be overwhelmed with pseudo personalized, not particularly, easy to digest copy, or easy to stand out. And I think what we're moving towards is generative AI is a building block to interactive AI. And interactive AI is all about how do you actually, solve a customer problem, right? How do you use AI to create a human like connection? And that's sort of the vision that we have. And you definitely need to use generative technology in this, but I don't think it's sufficient. I think you need to start with the consumer in mind and work backwards versus starting with, I'm going to help you create spammy email things at unprecedented scale because I'm using AI. We don't think that's the answer to the message being well received.
Yeah, fascinating. Fascinating, interactive AI. And yes, I think today, when you look at the generative aspect of things around text and audio and video, people are actually playing and trying to understand what the technology can provide and how it can augment one's roles. I think it's very important to be responsible when we use it and always have a human in the loop. We all are going to, as we are trialing and experimenting with the technology, have good experiences and less good experiences, actually. But we need to go through that journey and actually start putting some guardrails as to, what is actually good use of responsible AI and what is less good use of it. So it's interactive, it's generative, but it has to be responsible. When you look, Alex, as well, at this interactive AI and this future. So, let's imagine Relayto in 5 to 10 years time from now. What does success look like for you? What is your long-term vision and mission that drives you today? And maybe add more to this interactive world where technology is going to be critical for us to grow and scale.
Well, I think at a very fundamental level, we want to be the interactivity layer of internet and all important communications that haven't made it into the internet, right? Like, so if you think PowerPoint, fundamentally, that's a pre-World Wide Web technology still, right? It was built from before we started using browsers, right? And so we are bringing that into the internet and becoming the interactive layer on top of that. And I think um, the big idea behind it is it's help large portion of humanity to engage with big complex ideas. So our number is 1 billion. It is an arbitrary number, but it is like, how do we help 1 billion people to create important ideas and to help their audience engage with those ideas? This is sort of what underlines us, and that's why the democratization is really important. And whether it's working with small organizations or with very large organizations who touch a very large audience. The role of technology, I think, is something that I think needs to be supportive of the mission. And I think so you've heard me describe several terms that we use within Relayto. They're all kind of sets of technologies or buzzwords, if you want to call. So, we are software as a service company. We're in, artificial intelligence, whether it's generative or interactive AI. We're on that journey of using multimodal AIs as long as they support the fact that customers don't want to engage only with one medium. Customers are different, right? They have different preferences. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, they need to touch. So we want to engage different users, and we want to engage them in the like at a different point in time. A different person, same person may want to engage with content very differently depending on where they are in the journey. And so that sort of is the fundamental uh, value of where we see technology come in, is that it sort of enables us to delight the customer. And when again back to the mission, we keep thinking of like, well, great, so we're gonna land on Mars, and we're gonna build a civilization on Mars. Will PDFs help us get there this fast? I don't know. I think maybe some people would be more open, excited about the mission if the communications were easier to digest and understand. And then it would be kind of, disappointing to conquer kind of the bigger aspirations of humanity, but that gets stuck on something that's fundamental agent of human progress, which is how do we communicate at scale and at distance. So if you think about Relayto, kind of going back to the foundation, the mission of any communication medium is to figure out like a more efficient way for people to engage and distribute that medium. And I think the interactivity drives engagement, the asynchronicity, right? Like, can I create an experience around a conversation with somebody, like let's say a conversation with me, but that could be asynchronous and yet still feel very human. And so what is the combination of technology that's required to do that? That sort of is the something that's always going to be flexible, and always will serve the mission. That's sort of the way we see the world, because the AI will change. And even we've seen from our early applications, some things that we were really working hard on, 2 years ago are much easier to do now. So in some areas, you want to be on the cutting edge. In some areas, you want to be a fast follower and, quick adapter of whether it's a no-code software, SaaS, or AI.
Fascinating. Well, Alex, thank you very much for coming on to Scouting for Growth. Please tell us, where can we find you? So if people want to find a bit more about Alex Shevelenko, where do they go?
I'm on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, Shevelenko, just last name. You get a minor in Ukrainian if you get to spell it, but it's Shevelenko, Alex. And Relayto, we have a website, relayto.com, and we hope you sign up. There's a free version, so you could check it out for yourself, see what's possible. And obviously, we, as you heard, we can support organizations of different size around their needs. And we encourage you to do it. We encourage, even if you don't think we're good fit for you necessarily, we're happy to support your mission. If you care about your ideas, if you care about bringing them to life, I'm happy to help, and Relayto team is happy to help.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for joining me on Scouting for Growth. And I cannot wait to see you soon.
Thanks, Sabine. Always a pleasure.
If you like this podcast, subscribe now, share with your friends, and if you enjoyed it, please give it a 5-star review. Also, if you want to cover any specific subject with me, contact me on Instagram under Sabine VdL Officials or LinkedIn under Sabine VdL. Thank you.